This happened to a student named Samantha, and she was in sophomore year when this happened. It was around 2017, and since Samantha was in her sophomore year of high school, she didn't really have that much friends to talk to. She was mainly alone, since she pretty much was an introvert, and she never really liked being out in the crowd so much. Most of the time, she would sit by herself during lunch. Sure, there was a few other people that managed to ask her out and even asked her into to maybe sit with them, but she usually declines it since she preferred to be working alone. Now she was used to this kind of thing. However, it wasn't until one day in September when there was a cute guy that approached him. He introduced himself as Steve, and Steve seemed to be a pretty interesting guy. She wasn't so sure what was up with Steve, but Steve did seem very nice, although he may be a little bit out of her age range as he looked to be about a year older or so. "Hey there," Steve said, looking at Samantha. "I'm Steve." Samantha looked at Steve and welcomes him to the school and asked if she could do something to help him. He, however, decided to talk with her for a bit, saying, about maybe wanting to sit with her. She obliged and lets him sit with her, and they started talking about things they were into, such as anime and etc. As they were going on with their day, they had lunchtime. Everything seemed to be going good. However, it wasn't until a few days later where Steve had somehow started doing something really messed up. Steve started following Samantha almost every class, which made her really uncomfortable, and he somehow had found her schedule, which was really surprising but also really shocking. Samantha had told Steve to please stop following her, which of course that really upsetted him, but it doesn't end there. It wasn't until at least 2 weeks later when she didn't see Steve at the school anymore, thinking that maybe he possibly had given up. She ended up just shrugging it off as maybe he must have given up and went to go find something else to do. As Steve was pretty much just gone, it wasn't until Samantha was in second period when her teacher had told her that she had to go to the office. Of course, Samantha packed her stuff up, and as it was about 10 minutes before class ended, and she left the classroom. When she left the classroom, she ended up going to another room where she ended up seeing what seems to be her parents along with an officer and of course the principal. It was later revealed that Steve person was in fact a next door neighbor of the school that happened to be stalking a few other girls, and when other girls rejected him or tell him off, he gets really nosy and gets really upset at that point. What's really more disturbing was that what's found was in Steve's house were pictures of women. There were mainly girls ranging from grade 9 to all the way to senior year, which honestly really disturbed Samantha. There were a couple pictures of other girls, but there was a few of Samantha's house. How he managed to find her house, she doesn't even want to know. But however, what's really strange is that those photos were identical and looked like they were taking place at nighttime. One of the most disturbing photos that Samantha never expected Steve to take was a picture of her sleeping in her own house. Honestly, this really made Samantha disturbed, and she had to be pulled out of school for a few days because of the whole incident. Now, Steve has never returned to the school, but this really makes Samantha paranoid now. She started becoming more open and sitting with more people now at that point, because she had get paranoid when she's alone, thinking some creepy guy was going to ask her out or something. Steve was a creep, but she never really expected Steve to do this far into his creeping. She still hasn't seen him since, and she hopes it stays that way. So this took place like a few years ago, and this happened to one of my friends, which honestly his name was Damien. This happened sometime in 2016, and Damien was in senior year of high school. He was graduating that year, so he was pretty much just all done with his exam before his exams could be finished. This was a week before the exams were going on. Now, to put it as bluntly as this, Damien was always on top of his classes, mainly doing his usual things. However, he did dating this one girl named Ashley, and Ashley seemed to be a pretty nice girl. However, Ashley ended up moving away, which resulted in Damien breaking up with her. I know it is sad, but at the time it was for the best since Ashley was moving, and Damien only knew her since kindergarten, so it was kind of sad. It wasn't until maybe around the day before the exams when Damien was in school. He was in school when all of a sudden the school was having a lockdown drill. Honestly, he didn't even know what it was, or if someone was outside, or there was someone in the school, but he followed the procedures for the code red. Honestly, he heard the front doors of the school open since his classroom was not far from from the outside and the front yards. He had computer class at the last period of the day, so that really made sense. Honestly, he thought that it could have been police, but instead it sounded like a deranged man. He seems to be pounding on the door while yelling and screaming at them to open up. Honestly, this really freaked Damien out as he wasn't so sure as to who or what was there, but whatever this was banging on the door, and it seemed to be a pretty big guy. He tried to break down the door, but he failed to do so as cops had caught him. It wasn't until at least the summertime when Damien got out of high school. They got a letter from the school saying that there was apparently somebody in the school. Apparently this person was in the school and he was really mentally unstable, which he unfortunately had broken out of the school. He had broken into the school and was sending some really nasty death threats, which would explain why he was caught by the cops. It honestly made Damien really nervous about this man since he doesn't even know him, but it really frightens him now that this person was mentally unstable and was about to try and kick down the door when that never happened. Honestly, he doesn't even know what this man wanted, but God only knows what could have happened to Damien's class if that man had managed to break in. The phone system at the high school I went to was definitely really weird. If you wanted to call your parents, you would have to go to the office, as the phones in the classrooms didn't really work that well. Some of them don't even work at all, which honestly was stupid considering that they should have fixed it or have custodians fix the idea of it, but that happened to not be the case for one of the phones that happened in one of my classrooms. To give a bit of context, this took place in 2017 around April. Now, this actually happened to one of the teachers, which happened to be my art teacher named Miss K. I don't remember her last name, but we'll just call her by Miss K. This happened around the second period when Miss K was teaching an art class. She was teaching an art class about Michelangelo and a couple other famous artists when all of a sudden she got a phone call. Now, she picked up the phone thinking that it could have been staff or maybe be people looking for her, but when she picked up the phone and answered, she didn't hear anything. So she thought that maybe it was just some prankster trying to mess with her, so Miss K hung up the phone and she continued to teach her class. When her class was in the middle of working on stuff, just as she was about to go help another student, she all of a sudden heard the phone ringing yet again. She ended up picking up the phone thinking it might have been the teacher's, but on the speed dial or even the caller ID, it didn't say if it was from a classroom. So this was honestly really weird. Miss K picked up the phone again, but there was still nothing heard on the line. She ended up saying hello a few more times to try to see if this person can maybe give a little bit of background information as to who they were. No voice was being told on the phone, so it was really weird since she hadn't seen anyone on that phone. She ended up deciding to put the phone down, but just as she was about to do that, she heard a loud scream, what sounded like a deranged woman. She ended up putting the phone down and honestly looked to see if there was any caller ID, but there was no caller ID about displaying who it was or what the phone number was. Miss K had reported this to the school principal and they looked at the systems, but they couldn't retrace whatever number it was calling. Miss K had to think that what she experienced that day was completely paranormal, and normally she doesn't experience anything paranormal, and what's surprising is that she doesn't even believe in the paranormal. But after this experience, she does not really know what to really think.